Hey, Chris, let's do this. I love talking about board games. That's just what it comes down to. So, that's what we're going to do. Crowdfunding roundup this week. What do we got? What's out there? What little surprises do we have in store for you, along with a couple of the ones that we knew were launching in the first place? As always, if you like it, let me know. Comment down below on what you think of this roundup this week in terms of what's going on, what's ending, and everything else in between. I have a Patreon. That's all I'm going to say. Let's do this. You know what's fun talking about board games in general, especially ones that surprise us and the ones that come out of nowhere, right? Abducktion, a weirdly strategic game of duck kidnapping. You are alien interns or intern aliens, whatever you want to call it in that sense. You're reorganizing through the use of your specific tractor beam on your UFO to make the ducks of any specific color, really, a certain pattern. And it's raised almost $250,000. It sort of launched at the tail end of last week, and so it just has kind of blown expectations out of the water in terms of what it is. I mean, it's like a little bit of a Tiny Towns, only with ducks, if you will. 2 minutes to explain, 10 to 15 minutes to play, and like I said, you're just rearranging the ducks in a pattern to match the global group objectives that are out in the middle, and the first one to do so claims it, and then the one with the most victory points at the end wins. You can see here an example card. 6 points if you make that arrangement on your 10 spaces of ducks, and that's essentially all it is. On your turn in this situation, you have 3 cards in your hand. You're going to have 3 actions in order to manipulate your ducks in the first place in order to achieve one of those objectives in the middle. That's it. Now, the other side tangent that you need to know about this is because this is a slightly different game, you can actually affect ducks on other people's. And that's where people are either going to be turned off or turned on, because there is some take that, and you can kind of mess with other people's arrangements, which actually may not mess with them. It's sort of one of those games where, is it really beneficial for you to try and stop other people, or should you really just worry about yourself? You get the points in the upper left-hand corner, and you go until you win. Whatever that is. I forget what the end game scoring condition is. But in this case as well, there's an expansion that adds a little module here. You can see the little 2 mini expansion ship that they say can dock, space pod, if you will, docks on any side, any place to allow you to create different arrangements like this one. That's it. That's everything. That's all you need to know. $25 for the base game, $45 with the expansion. Now, I kind of wish these were little wooden meeples. I can't really tell what exactly they are, if they're little actually like rubber duckies or rubber ducky, anyway. So that's it. That's Abducktion, and that's why we're starting out with it number 1 here today. Number 2, we're going to go, Trailblazers. It's killing it. This is a mosaic trail making pattern style game in the form of a pseudo tile builder, if you will, where you have one of 3 different camps that you're going to be trying to, on any given turn, draft a card, play a card in order to create a loop that not only starts at the same colored camp, but also ends at the same colored camp. There's going to be in-game objectives, end of game objectives, and 2 mini expansions that are going to go along with this, one of which is a hiker traveling along the path that you can see here, and the other are the animals that you're going to be potentially photographing along the way from that aspect. It's probably, I would argue, maybe a little bit longer than 30 minutes. It really just depends on the analysis paralysis of your group, because you're having a hand of cards and you're drafting 2 and then passing the hand a certain direction. And the 4 rounds that you play, the first 3 rounds you put out one of these various colored camps, either the brown, the blue, or the red. And then the 4th round, you just have to continue finishing your loops. So it's a complete game. It's a solid game. People are going to really like this game. It's just going to be a little bit more thinking than a lot of other spatial tile laying, map element creating style of games. And so that's really what you need to know. It's a lot more difficult to create these loops than we originally thought when we played it. So full disclaimer from that aspect of things. Apart from that, the only question I had was, what was the price point going to be? Now, you'll see me stop right here, and they have a solo mode, and there's like 3 different modes that I mentioned, including the 2 expansions, and then the solo mode also has a couple different ways you can play it as well. So print and play edition, super travel edition, which actually, for my review, the super travel edition is really kind of cool, actually. I really like the low overhead from that aspect of things. $49, $79, which is gonna, I'm assuming, include the meeples that I showed in my video as well. So rulebook is there, simulator is there, a little bit of everything there. So yeah, everything you need to know is out there. Now, are they doing stretch goals? Nope, they're not doing stretch goals whatsoever. So there you go. That's everything. Yeah, Bitewing Games, it's doing great so far. So $75,000, $76,000 now that we've refreshed the page. Check it out if you're interested. Next up, Nanolith. We knew this one was launching. It's got $132,000. It's a legacy miniature-esque campaign game. They compare it to a JRPG, Japanese role-playing game, video game, if you will. And this sort of concerns me at the same time when I see this description. Co-op, legacy, skirmish, and story-based. Just how many of those things can you do to a really high level is the only question I always wonder in these situations. You have these nanobots that you're going to be potentially taking damage and charging and using them for special abilities to combo and to attack and to traverse the cyberpunk world that this is set in. But this is more crawl-esque because the rule book really down here, when you click on it, really gives you a 30 to 40 page rule book that you're really going to have to know from head to toe because of the nature of the game. Now, when I pop over the rulebook, the first thing you need to know from the rules, I'm not going to go through all 30 pages, obviously. I mean, we don't have that much time in this video. But the biggest disappointment, I think, from my side of things when I'm trying to play a game like this nowadays, and the biggest trouble I haven't gotten Madara played a lot more, right, is because this one, just like that, requires you to play 4 characters. And if you're like me and you don't have a consistent group or a consistent group of 4 people, that really puts a stress or a strain on things, especially if you have 2, but even if you have 3, because as much as I like playing games and taking the brunt of things and, you know, having to explain things, having to play 2 characters in a game like this with all the depth and the rules and the knowledge base and the overhead that comes with it, eventually I get a little tired of being the one that always has to do that, right? That sort of happened to me a little bit with Vagrant Song as well, of having to play additional characters. Now, I didn't have to, but, you know, just from that sort of thinking overhead aspect of what do I really want to play and how do I really want to play a game like this in the first place. And as with a lot of the games that have come out recently in this line, we have what is known as the storybook as well as the encounter book, where you're going to be visualizing and then, you know, reading from a story, just similar to the most recent Trailblazers game, if you will. Then they give a little bit of a round overview here in terms of what you're going to be doing, the status phase, and then your action phases where you're going to be taking place one after another, and then the enemy turns where they're going to be spawning and then taking their actions. So relatively routine in that aspect. What you need to know about the actual character phase here is you're going to have 5 action dice that you're going to be rolling and placing them next to your board in order to take the actions that are on those selected dice. So it's not going to be choose whatever you want. It's going to be roll and mitigate and use more of a tactical nature rather than the strategic that we've seen with a few other games like Earth Under Siege. Now, as they talk about it down here in a second, you can see that the stress is going to be something that you're accumulating based on how you're acting and how you're interacting, but you can mitigate that in several different ways, including causing stress by yourself, on yourself, in order to change the dice that you have rolled to change the actions that you want to accomplish. Then they talk about really the important thing, and this is a lot of the make it or break it nowadays for these dungeon crawls, is, well, how do you actually attack? How do you fight in this? You're going to have attack values, you're going to have weapon values, you're going to be adding, you're going to be subtracting, you're going to be looking for a line of sight, and you're going to be calculating that orthogonally by the number of squares between you and the target. But again, it's going to be a roll as we scroll down here to actually see what if you hit and how much damage is done compared to the enemy's defense value. The other thing that you can do is you can be hacking, so it wouldn't be a cyberpunk world without that, as well as interacting with things like jump points, special spaces, and performing other free actions in between your turns. So we've seen a lot more rise of the cyberpunk in the last, 6 to 8 months, but is this unique enough from a dungeon crawl standpoint to really entice you? And that's really the question. 80 euros for the base pledge here, for the encounter book, the storybook, and everything else that goes along with it. What else we got going on in this campaign? We have all core exclusives and deluxe exclusives as well at the 110 euro. So what does that actually look like and the differences? So let's see, it's really more miniatures. New arena mode as well. So it's funded. It's got some stretch goals here, a new comic, a couple upgrades in terms of deluxifications. Yeah, check it out if you will. And these appear to be, I'm assuming, scenarios that you're going to be going through, not just comics. And then the rest seems to be just component upgrades. Does this entice you enough? Does Cyberpunk entice you? We've seen now several, like I mentioned. We just saw The Breach. We saw the other one from Awakened Realms. How does this appeal to you? Does this appeal more? Miniature, not miniature? It's not a bad price point. It's a little lower than I actually expected. But it's got a lot going on. It's using more of the system that we've seen ever since Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lions come out that a lot of other people have adopted. So it's here to stay, and we're going to see more of it. But is this one right for you, and how does it compare And those are the highlights on the Make It or Break It. Check out the rulebook for yourself because it's 35 pages long. It can give you more insight if you want. That is Nanolith, the Cyberpunk RPG board game. Next up, we're going to talk about Red Dragon Inn, the Battle for Greyport, Chaos in Copperforge. This is a reprint and a new expansion for a game that actually came out, the base game, in 2016 because it's sort of been out of print. It's overfunded in, less than 48 hours, and we're going to take a look here. Now, the biggest problem I have with this page is, unlike the other pages that we looked at, there's really no rules explanation. There's nothing on this page that makes me go, what is this deck builder? How does this deck builder differ? What are the important aspects of this deck builder that I need to know compared to other deck builders out there, right? The Red Dragon Inn has a reputation for their other game, but this one is much more under the radar. And so Slugfest is trying to, well, they've created and they've successfully done so already in terms of supporting this expansion. So it's got 8 new characters. It's got a new mechanic, a new amount of bosses. The new mechanic is contraptions, which are like, well, just basically little traps that attack you. Bad guys have items that they can pick up and use against you. The problem is, apart from these 2 videos, that's about all there is on the page to make you really know what this is doing. Metal coins, upgrades. You can get the base game that's out of print as well, and you can get the previous expansion with pirates. $100 for everything, $52 for the Copperforge and just the Pirates expansion, and the base game plus the new expansion is going to earn you $80. I mean, it's about priced of what I would think for a crowdfunding deck builder, but the question is going to be, with some of these stretch goals, does it make it more worthwhile from that aspect of things? New scenario, something else as well. And I looked at this one on Board Game Geek because, like I said, there's no mechanisms of what this one does differently and how it is varied. And it's, pro con, it sounds like the marketplace is a little bit different. You get coins per turn, and at the end of your turn, you have to buy a card. But like with other markets where there's no way of reshuffling them, you just might get a crappy system of the market that's in place, and you might have to wait or spend your money on a deck builder where your space is limited, and you don't want to clog up your deck with cruddy cards, but you don't really have a way to mitigate that, was one of the bigger complaints I saw. Positive that's slightly different, that I again had to read through several reviews on Board Game Geek to even get this information, is you have characters out there, like you have 3 characters, and then you're going to be lining up monsters head to head, and you're going to be trying to manipulate your monsters to match the person that's going to be able to best defeat that monster. And you have 2 colored cards that you're going to be using here in terms of the cards that you can equip to your character that are going to be either equipable, because you can only do 1 color on a hero, so you have to have the right matching set, right? Sort of a little bit of a tower defense in a way-ish, that you're battling through these rounds until you get to the final boss. And so there's 3 rounds, but it's really the final boss that's a make it or break it for the game, depending on how you do at the end. A lot of keywords, though, that they say, as with some of these deck builders that are really incorporating that, trying to layer on mechanics without maybe layering on the rules. Pirates, they say, also allows for some deck cycling or potentially market cycling. And again, the question is just how much are contraptions necessary? How much of a new cool thing are they adding to this? And I guess I just wish there was actually more information on this page instead of, again, always having to click over to someone else's, whatever this is, and then this one, and then this one. I would just like to actually, have a little bit more design element on the page, like we saw with a couple others and like a couple of the other ones that I'll be talking about next have. So it's known, it seems to be doing well. It's raised more money than I thought it would in the first 48 hours. So it's funded $50,000. It's $50,000. So take that for what you will. Red Dragon Inn, Battle for Greyport, the expansion, Chaos in Copperforge. Check it out. Next up, and again, words I never thought I'd be coming out of my mouth. This is the Necrohamster. Necrohamster, folks. Charming card game, 2 to 4 players. You're summoning creatures every turn. And the element here is that they're taking the spin on Marvel Champions, where in order to summon these cards, because all you do on your turn is you play one face down, you just flip it over, and then whatever number is in the upper left-hand corner is how many cards you have to discard from your hand in order to summon it. They have unique asymmetric abilities. I think they say there's something like 15 different types of creatures that you can summon. And then at the end of the game, you play, I believe, 8 rounds. Whoever has the most creatures with the most points on at the end wins. At the beginning of your turn, you refresh by drawing 2 cards, rinse and repeat until you're done. That's it. Everything you need to know right there. 1 copy, 26 pounds. Boom. Double copy, additional 26 pounds. That's Necrohamster, right? It's that straightforward. It's going to be some take that, though, because the card powers are going to affect other people's, and you're just going to have to be aware of that. And how much of that do you like in a 10 to 15 minute game from those elements? So it's doing great, actually. $6,400 of a $1,200 goal. So take that for what you will. Next up, we have Bako Bako, we're going to go with Dig and Write. Now, this is another spin on the home print and play, $1,800 of a $300 goal. And the essential element of it is that it's sort of like a combination of a roll and write and sort of like Cartographers meets Facilis. You know that one from Kids Table Board Games, where what you're going to be doing is you're going to be rolling 2 dice, and each die in this case actually has a specific line on it. So like 1 is you just put 1, 2 is you do 2 spaces, 3 maybe makes a U of 3 like this. And so each number on the die is going to give you a different shape or a number of little fences, as the term in the game uses, that you're going to be putting out on your board each turn. And you're going to try to surround these objectives, these tiles, these eggs, dinosaur bones, whatever it may be, in order to score the most points. Now, sort of similar, and the other reason I'm using Cartographers in this sense is that there is some take that, and that's really going to be the issue of how big of a make it or break it is that for you, because I think they say every 3 rounds in this 15-round game, you're going to be drawing holes on somebody else's board in order to inflict trouble for them to be able to surround stuff or get in their way, essentially, as a take that mechanism. How big or not are you on that? Because I think that's the other thing that sometimes people don't like with Cartographers, with the monsters that you draw on other people's boards. The rulebook right here is 3 pages long. It tells you how you have to draw enclosures, how you're going to be getting treasures as well as fossils, and examples of what the holes do as well. There's a solo mode, and you can even compare, just like Cartographers, well, how good did you actually do? That's pretty much it in a nutshell. So it's going to cost you what? $6 for a print and play here? That's it. Everything you need to know. Bako, Dig and Write. These games are killing it on crowdfunding right now lately, so there you go. Ivion, Season 2. Ivion? I one of the two. This is Season 2, Winner's Bite, and just like the picture here represents, it's nearly 400% funded already in the first 48 hours, and this is a deck constructive, sort of in the lines of Senjutsu with more deck building that you have where you're battling 2-on-2 or 1-on-1. And you have the various sets that you can be getting. There were 3 different sets that you can see over on the right side of this picture right here in the previous Kickstarter campaign. There's 3 new ones that you can get in this Kickstarter campaign, each with 2 characters that are asymmetric, with different abilities, different decks, and different powers on the grid that you're going to be, doing more of a spatial element to, rather than just a head-to-head deck builder. They run through what the new stuff is here, 15 to 30 minutes. I don't know if it's that short. I mean, I imagine this is more like a 30 to 45 minute game for us, depending on how strategic and how tactical you are. They give you the option to construct your character, but they also come with a pre-constructed deck. You're just going to be comboing through card use and card play. I've got my copy that I'll hopefully be putting out a review of one of the original sets, one of the original expansion cores, whatever it was, of just one of the individual ones with the 2 heroes, so I can give you a little bit more insight into how I feel about the gameplay, not really the different characters, but at least what the gameplay does in terms of differences in that side of things. Free anthology box for $200. Woof. Kickstarter exclusive, make your own traits, and playmats and acrylic tokens and sleeves if you really want that sort of thing. Each one individually of the new ones are going to cost you $39. And again, they have miniatures and they have the full set of cards that are going to be going along with each of them. Acrylic upgrades, as well as everything else you'd expect in a standalone game. Ram and the Ravens, the second one, and the Fox and the Forest is the third one. So in this case, for this one, we're getting a Wilder and a Survivalist. Whereas with this one, we're getting a Watcher and a Steward. And the first one, I skipped over completely, Huntsman and Winterborn. So it looks like the Winterborn might be a mage of some sorts. $99 for all of them, so saving about $20 if you buy them all. And the previous ones here, I believe, are also available from Set 1. Set 1 and Set 2 will offer you $199, just a hair under $200. And I believe the one I have here is the Hound and the Hare of these 3. The Knight and the Lady and the Sun and the Stars are the first ones from the first time around. Shipping is going to be what it's going to be. Specializations, the crafting of how you want to do it. If you want to deck construct, you have the ability to do so. The thing, when I've read through the rules now twice, that's really sort of made it a little bit more of a difficult learning curve is one of the systems that they use in terms of the status effects and which ones are in status. Hopefully the rule book with this set goes through that a little bit more detailed, because that was sort of the big question I had with this one. So because when you pull up the rule book here, I mean, it's only 8 pages including the cover, so that's nothing at all. Now the control aspect here, I'll blow this up. This is what I was talking about. So this is what it's not completely clear, and you have to be very careful of. If you look at this right above my head here, this card is unaffected by slow, which is this top icon. Then it is affected by silence and disarm. And is it always 1, 2? Could you have the top 2 that aren't affected and the bottom one? And so it doesn't give you a good increment right here of what that actually entails. Because what happens is you can't play cards of this type essentially against that character or that card if they're unaffected by it. Just doesn't do anything. But you can spend resources to allow you to basically get rid of that control at the same time. And so that's the biggest mechanism I'm just not sure about yet, because it kind of makes sense in my head, but I haven't seen it in action on the table yet. So hopefully this weekend I'll be able to give it more thoughts after playing through that. Take that for what you will. Again, it's raised almost $40,000. So I'm a little surprised it's not a little higher, but I think it's also flown under the radar completely. I mean, if I didn't have a copy sitting on my shelf behind me right now, I probably wouldn't know about anything this game related at all. I mean, I remember it coming around the first time, but I don't remember it standing out. So hopefully when I get a little bit more hands-on, I can give you guys a little bit more of my thoughts in a detailed manner as well. That's Ivion. Little Flower Duel Shop. So in case you wanted to collect flower paraphernalia in this dueling Little Flower Shop, there's been other iterations of the Flower Shop as well as the following games of a duel aspect. But this is a bring your own pencil game, so it's just basically printing and playing as well. You're choosing your items for your warehouse, and you're choosing to just fill your shops with them. So what they say is that if they hit stretch goals and if they unlock additional content, it'll be additional game variants and possibly even a new game in the same line of this game. And all you're doing is picking an item and adding it to your shop and scoring via set collection. You can see a little bit of how it plays here on the video. And you can also play it solo. Unfortunately, that's about it. Now, they run through some of the other iterations of this game, the original Little Flower Shop, the Flower Shop, the dice game, and then a few other add-ons down here from their other games that they will give you a little bit more insight onto random videos as well. So, stretch goals, like I said, every 2K. And I just wish there was a little bit more of an explanation of what you're actually doing, because it's just back and forth. Where's the nuance? Where's the decision-making? And where's the reason to get it? How does it differ from other stuff out there? But Dr. Finn's, BYOP, Little Flower Duel Shop. Little Flower Shop Duel. There you go. Next up here, we have Mini Meeple Melee. And I feel like I've seen another iteration of these Melee games or the Mini Meeple games come out in the past. And this is the Baron's Game Room third game created. So I feel like it's probably from the same designer that I've seen in the past. This is an asymmetric hero battling game of arena skirmish style, only in a mini tin. And all you do is you set up these 2 tins in any configuration that you want, drop in your meeple, and go. You get 2 actions per turn with asymmetric abilities, and there's going to be terrain, there's going to be items, and you're going to basically go until you're the last one standing in this, I think, mostly 2-player game. And if they hit some stretch goals down below, they have an extra expansion, an extra solo expansion, as well as a semi-cooperative expansion, I believe. So how to play right there. Again, the 3 game modes, the free-for-all. So I guess it actually does play more than 2 people. Never mind. Team 2x2, and then boss battle as well if you want to play together. So that's it. Video. Stretch goals if they hit, and these is the stuff I was talking about in terms of the extra expansions. And then shipping is, whatever for a tin. I have no idea. $5, 17 though, if you're going in the rest of the world. Yeah, that's shipping nowadays. So there you go. That is Mini Meeple Melee. Next up, we have a game straight out of the headlines, really. This is UA. This is a cooperative card game. Ukraine against a war machine that is going up against them, right? It's already at about 70% funded by the time you're watching this. And it's just a card-driven game of co-op nature where you're laying down cards based on the amount of time that you are given in each round. And each card has a specific length that it takes to do or to achieve or objective that you're trying to carry out. And then the deck itself, the red cards here are going to be going against you with pre-programmed actions as you flip them over. That's basically it, right? You can exchange cards between characters, between players, if you will, cooperatively in a real-time situation. And you're just trying to optimize via your strategy of how you want to basically be able to defeat the enemy. Now, the only problem is you'll see these icons at the bottom of these cards. I don't really know what they mean. They clearly correspond to places on the map. and it's going to be taking place of the liberation of those territories. I'm assuming a amount that is needed to do so. It talks about the different types of cards here: military, civil, enemy actions, what the card breakdown is of the options that you see here. Then it just talks to you about the price points. $29 for the base game if you get an early bird. But the problem is that's about it. I wish they had a rule book up here so I could tell you a little bit more. But there you go. It's funding well at this point for something that really just launched. And check it out if you will, link in below. Now, last up, we're going to go to On Circus Grounds, the narrative puzzle game. This is another escape room puzzle style-ish game, 2 to 5 hours, depending on how good you are at this game, they say, set in sort of a 1800s cooperative detective murder mystery case, if you will. They go with the historically accurate Victorian circus. They spent time researching true documents, true pictures, everything that goes along with this narratively as accurate as possible scenario. And so what we have here is essentially just that. There's no direction. It says basically there's a murder, you need to figure out the motive, and go. Here's 44 pieces of elements, clues, and information that you can utilize to figure it out. Now, it's a remake, a redo of a Dutch game, Meester 1883 from 2020, which is apparently well thought of. So it's not without a pedigree. It's not just something completely made up off the cuff. It's a retelling of that. So that's a little bit more enticing. But the question just is, do you need another one of these? Is this really what you love? Do you want to spend that much money on it? Now, they give you the option here on the side to just get the epilogue, which is kind of strange. $20 for the epilogue, $42 for the game itself. Free refill pack to go along with it, and then $64 if you want to get all of that stuff included as a whole. So again, escape room style games are not my forte. They're not my interest whatsoever, but I know a lot of people out there really love them. So compared to the other one that I just talked about last week, the Dimensions, sort of diorama escape room game-esque, this is a much better price point. So take that for what you will. Check it out if you want. Campaign updates. By the time you watch this, Dead Reckoning will literally have hours left. A couple of you guys told me off in the comments section. You guys are great sometimes about how got someone telling me that I'm not a gamer and clearly don't know anything I'm talking about because I wasn't as super interested in this game as they were. So anyway, it's doing great. It's got $500,000. People really like it. There's been a lot of clamor for it. It's just, more of Dead Reckoning. And it's going to cost you hours and hours for each saga expansion. And the question just is, with a game like this, do you need more? Do you need more of it? Have you gotten through the base game? I will say, like I mentioned on the actual roundup when I did it the first time, I think the base game is a lot lower price than I was expecting. $79 is a good price point from that aspect. Now, the expansions, though, they're like $59. So that's not quite as good a deal, but I'm guessing that's, just true of every other crowdfunding campaign I've ever talked about, right? The base game is not where these campaigns make their money. It's the expansions. It is. It's true. It's an industry thing. It's not me just spouting that, right? That's just everything you need to know. This game just has, to me, try it before you buy it written all over it, I think there's going to be plenty of copies on the secondary market that you can do, and that would be my main aspect as someone who does have passing interest in it, but isn't wanting to spend, $100 to $200 on it at this point. Yep, I'm going to talk about it again, Foundations of Rome. And again, contrary to the comments in the YouTube section, I have nothing against the game itself. People really say that they really enjoy this game. And somebody commented that maybe they have a cardboard retail version coming out at some point. And, I would probably buy a cardboard retail version of this. It's nothing against the game itself I have, folks. People love this game. I am glad that people like this game. I am not trying to steal anyone's joy. Although you'd think contrary to that, again, if you read the comment section on some of the other videos. It's got even more than Dead Reckoning. It's got $670,000. It's doing great. It's got 6,700 people that are backing it and that are getting in on this. So it's a success, regardless of how you feel about some of these games. Personal opinions set aside, people like it. And if people didn't like it, they wouldn't be getting it. So as with all of these things, you vote with your wallet, and people are happy to get this. And I'm happy that other people are happy, period. Again, but this is one that I would say, just like Return to Dark Tower, I would try it before you buy it, because all three of these games have in common to me that they're great games, but are they great games for you to own, or are they just great games that you would be willing to play? And that's where I think I'm really making my distinction nowadays is, I'm happy to play a lot of games, but I'm not as happy to own as many games. Like, I'm trying to actively get rid of games, right? So that's the distinction that I'm making nowadays in terms of my own personal collection. So anyway, it's doing great. Check it out if you want. It's going to cost you, again, between $100 to $300, depending on what pledge level you want. But it's going to be ending over the weekend. So if you want, this might be your last chance for a while to get it, or at least locked in to get it for sure. There you go. Halls of Hegra. I'm going to talk about this one because it's flying under a lot of radars. It's going to be done before this video airs next week. This is probably the best pure solo game that's on crowdfunding right now, and that's maybe been out on crowdfunding in the last month or two. I put that out there that again, that's purely subjective, have not played it whatsoever, but just from a design aspect, from a reading the rules aspect, and what they're bringing to you in a unique aspect, that's why I'm putting that out there. And it's not a horrible price point either. I don't even remember what it was, but let's take a look here. Yeah, it's only 51 bucks. So, and again, for someone who may have missed the previous video where I talked about this one and where it flew under the radar, I want to bring it to people's attention again, because these are the types of games that are also worth talking about, even though these aren't breaking 6 digits. Speaking of that, this was my pick from the other week ago, and this is also going to be ending in less than a week. This is Primordial Secrets, which is at 150% funding. I really think you need to give this one a look-see, and I say that as someone who really doesn't find the artwork appealing whatsoever, but I think the gameplay, just like Halls of Hegra, makes up for it for a sort of deduction, tactical, strategy-based card game with deck-building aspects. So I think this one is going to be another fly-under-the-radar style of game. There you go. Campaign updates, quick and dirty at the end here. That's it. That's the crowdfunding roundup with a few campaign updates at the end there. As always, I just love talking about games. And, before the inevitable comments come in at the end here that are like, nothing I'm interested here. You know what? That's okay. You know what? I just love talking about these things because, you never know what you're going to miss if you aren't even willing to give stuff a look-see, That's why it's so interesting to me to now read through a lot of these rule books, because you start to be able to discern a little bit about, your own tastes, what seems to be smooth, where sort of the design, I don't want to say flaws, because, I can't speak to flaws in that sense, but where design hiccups that you may or may not be interested in really start to become illuminated as someone who now reads, literally 8 to 10 rule books on a weekly basis to be able to regurgitate and give you some thoughtful analysis on them, on what you should know. And that's apart from like the rule books that I'm reading for something like this or something like this, right? So giving some contrast there as well to compare what does a rule book look like for this that's a finished product out at retail, and what does a rule book look like for something that is on crowdfunding currently. I'll be frank with you, I've seen some absolutely top-notch rule books on crowdfunding that are better than retail, and I've seen some absolutely ones that I go, this is kind of hard to, okay. So everything in between. As always, thanks for watching in the first place. That's all I got here at the end. I'm not going to ramble. I'm not going to tell you any tangential stories about my life at this point. You got enough stuff otherwise to do on a Friday. So stay classy. See you around. Have a great weekend.